Right off the bat, I had a story that I want to tell you guys, and it's one of those things where I have some things I wanted to talk about, but then this really happened yesterday, and I thought I would just pitch it to you. So depending on who you believe, I either decided to donate some time at the mission to help out of the goodness of my heart, or there was some unpleasantness at Burger King over what I considered to be an angry Whopper, and I'm never allowed to go back. As a result, there's some community service that needed to be done. So, I went to the mission yesterday. When I got there, they said, well, you're going to be here for about 3 weeks, and we're going to introduce you to everybody. They brought in like 25 guys. They're all sitting there, and I mean, everybody has a bad thing, a bad time. I always look at it like any one of us are 1 or 2 wrong turns away from being in that type of spot. So there's absolutely zero judgment. But I'm sitting there, and they're like, we're going to introduce everybody, and the gentleman that runs it, an older southern gentleman, and he's like, well, now we're going to talk to everybody around here. We're going to go ahead and George, we're going to have, Tate Griffen, we're going to have you meet everybody's here. And about that time, this guy, Mr. Lawson, who looked like a photo negative of Snoop Dogg if he never got famous, with blonde cornrows, who's sitting professionally like this. He's definitely drunk, or happy, or both. And he keeps interrupting. He goes, I got something to say. And I'm not doing some stereotypical impression. That's what he sounds like. I take some of it on my phone. So if you don't believe me, catch me outside and I'll show it to you. They're like, I got to go all day. And I'm like, Mr. Lawson, you need to calm down when you're turning. You just need when you're turning. Now, here we go, talking about Tate. Tate's going to be here to help you feel good. He's like, I got something I got to say. He's like, Mr. Lawson, are you going to have to go outside? You're going to wait your turn. So finally it gets to Mr. Lawson's turn. And he stands up from these 25 guys. He's like, we got a community refrigerator up there. Why are you motherfuckers making all my cheese? Why are you motherfuckers making all my cheese? He's like, Mr. Lawson, you're not allowed to talk like that. You know, use that language in here on the machine. You're not doing that. I apologize. Have you ever heard those people that'll say they're sorry for something, and that makes it okay to keep doing it? Like, if they're like, you're a big giant asshole. I mean, I'm kidding, you're all good. Like, that made that okay? That's what he's doing. So, common language, he's going to have a cheap common language. And I go up there, it's time we go for work, common language. And I get in the mother refrigerator, common language, and it's gone. Common language, and now he's apologizing before he says it, which means he knows he's doing it. Common language, but I go in there, I go to work for 7 hours, common language. Took my cheese sandwich, now it ain't there, and I ain't got no cheese. So now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to walk around every person in this room, I'm going to be like, I'm going to smell your breath, see if you got some cheese. I'm going to see you with that cheese. Was you? They're like, all right, Ms. Lawson, it's time for you to settle down. Just chill out. Now, I'm biting my tongue till it bleeds, because, I mean, that's priceless. And you don't want to be the person that's caught on tape laughing at the homeless, because it's really, really hard to put a good spin on that. For real. So, we do our thing and I leave. Then this morning I had to go back, and when I get in there, I'm sitting at this desk they gave me, like to create the illusion that I'm important or have some official duties there. And Mr. Lawson comes over, slightly less inebriated than he was 24 hours earlier. He sits down across from me, he's like, so what do you think about all this? I'm sure you judge me, what do you think about this? He's a 60-year-old guy with blonde cornrows. I'm looking at him and I said, I'll be honest with you, I don't pass any judgment. I think any one of us could be in the exact same spot that you're in. Just takes another, wrong turn or something happened to you that's not even your fault. And I think that you guys live here, and I'm going to be spending some time here, so the more positive we can make it, and a judgment-free area, I think, it'll go along better. So I realize sometimes I feel like you don't have a single friend in the world, but, you just met me, Bob. I'm your friend, if that's cool with you. And he kind of got a little choked up, and he's like, from here to here for me. And he's like, your breath smell like provolone. Did you eat that cheese sandwich? Like, no. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm making fun of the homeless, because, again, there's no good way to put a spin on that. And we've all been poor. I've spent most of my time poor. By applause, because applauding is free, how many of you would classify yourselves as the working poor? If you didn't clap, you uppity bastards, then good for you for having some money. You should have brought more of your friends and paid $15 to come see Bill and the gang. Don't turn on the audience, don't turn on the audience. No, we've all been poor. Have you ever been so poor you can't afford the things that the homeless already have? All like garbage bags. I've been so poor that I could not afford to buy garbage bags. My larger garbage is housing my smaller garbage. Like I have 7 KFC buckets that's housing all the used Q-tips, dirty diapers, and paper towels and whatnot in my house. And the thing is I have friends that have to do that, not just in college, like they're in their 40s, and they have to do that, and they get all uppity about it. It's like, just because you're poor don't mean that you can't be environmentally conscious. The extra crispy buckets, where you put your aluminum. The $5 box, where you put the plastic. Things like that. I was thinking about what I could bitch about McDonald's that hasn't been bitched about by other people before. And I came up with a new idea. Does anybody expect anything good from McDonald's? Like there's a certain bottom shelf level that you know your McDonald's food's coming from and it's not going to be that great. But you're like, if it's below your standards, like when McDonald's doesn't meet your minimum standards, like you might die from eating it because your standards are that low. So I have something I would like to introduce, and that is the 10% give a shit surcharge. And that means that for an additional 10%, they gotta give a shit. They don't have a choice. So you can't have onions on your bun. You can't have it stacked like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. They actually have to spend a little bit more. So I'll get that McDouble. Instead of $1, it's $1.10, but they have to give a shit. I don't know what you're thinking. What if you pay that 10 cents and then you get it, and it's obvious they didn't give a shit? Then I think you should be allowed to go back and slit their throats. And that's the plan. That's the whole plan. Who's on board? Who would do that? I'm loving that. Yeah. See, if you laugh a little bit extra or give one of those spontaneous applauses, it gives me a second to think of what the fuck else I was going to say to you. It's kind of a give and take. I know you paid, but work with me here. I've been thinking about death a lot lately. That's always like, I'm sorry, I got the McMeat sweats. I'm gonna take this. So, no, for real, I was thinking about death, and you guys been to a funeral where they're like, oh, they're gonna play Wind Beneath My Wings, and it's gonna be magical. It's like, just stop it. Like, that's so dumb. It's like taking hamsters to the vet or something. It's like, if somebody already died, if you're not already choked up about it, you're not going to choke up over something Bette Midler has to say. Just get on with it. So anyway, I just thought of the people that died and how I liked them more before they died, and then when they died, I liked them less because I had to go to their funeral and it was a big pain in the ass. And that's when I decided that I'm not going to do that to anyone. I was telling my wife this the other day. I said, I've been actually kind of planning it out. I was like, if I die tomorrow and we have no money, just don't even claim the body. Like, who cares? For real. Like, I don't know, one of those strawberry farms use me as a scarecrow or something. Dress me up in some cosplay and get third place at Comic-Con. I don't know. But if I live long enough to have money and everybody else is taken care of and you want to do something, I want it to be a lot of fun. So, for everybody. Starters, I need a team of all midget pallbearers. I think that's cool. Just by applause. Are there any wrestling fans here? Woo! All right, you guys know who Paul Bearer is?
Yes!
One of those midgets dressed like him. He's walking the casket, they're walking over. I just want him to bust out and go, oh yes! Oh yes! And everybody's just trying to be like that. Nobody's going to be in on it either. They're just going to do it. And we're going to play it that way. I also want some pseudo-celebrity mourners. I think that I will rest in peace better if I know that after I'm dead, there is a photograph. In the background, me in a casket with a double cheeseburger sitting on my chest, and in the foreground, my wife crying her eyes out while being consoled by the Hamburglar in a commercial professional-grade costume from McDonald's. I'm sorry, that shit's funny. If you walked in, seriously, and I'm not even going to say if, because statistically, if you count the amount of burgers that I've eaten in my life, I'll be dead before all of you, so I'll say when. When then you walk into my viewing and you see that shit, you'll be like, he told us about that in Kaiser. I can't believe it's been 6 months. It's for real. But that would be awesome, right? I mean, who's not on board with that? The other thing I think would be cool is to have a barber there. Because I want at least one person to leave and be like, oh, why don't you get that haircut? Tate's funeral. Yeah, barber. I just think that's cool. I don't know why, I just think it's cool. So when I die, don't be afraid to come. Oh, there's also going to be a Sunday bar. Because you can't cry when you're making a Sunday, unless you make it at that old Ponderosa that used to be in Lavelle, because that shit is horrible. Remember that machine? I kept waiting for Sky from Star Trek, and like, I can't control it. It's nothing but just ooze. I'm not going to name any names, Bill, but I think it was some flatulence in the front row. When you can exert flatulence and laughter from someone, you're not doing too bad. Yeah! How many people here like fails? Really? Yeah! YouTube, for real. Does anybody watch fails? So 3 people watch fails. I guess the rest of you are going to be bored as shit for the next 3 minutes. Well, if you don't know what fails are, who watched America's Funniest Home Videos? Oh, yeah. You remember the only 30-second part of that show that didn't have Bob Saget talking, that would just be like a montage of people getting hurt in the same way? Like, it showed a bunch of people on trampolines, one right after the other. Then a guy would jump on there and somebody throw a big ice ball to come up and crack him in the crotch, and you think it's great. Well, fails are nothing but that. Go to Fail Army on YouTube. You can type in anything you can think of and watch fails, like skiing fails and parachuting, fails and all that stuff. It's great. Sled riding fails. My personal favorite is definitely the trampoline fails. My wife is a therapist and has way more education than I do if I went to school and lived 4 times. She's super smart. But it's kind of weird and dark because she's like, I don't want to watch fails. I'm like, you can pick whatever kind of fails we're going to watch. It's going to be awesome. And I gotta tell you, before I get to hers, my favorite fail is one where people light their drinks on fire. Have you guys ever seen those? And they go to drink it and then they catch their face on fire. And they start beating themselves in the face and put it out. And every now and again they'll have one where they go to take a drink and they spill it in their lap. And they're punching themselves in the nuts trying to put out a fire. You know it's bad when the better of 2 evils, the lesser of 2 evils, is punching yourself in the crotch to put the fire out. But back to her, she's like, fine. Like, what? Which ones do you want to watch? She's like, swimming fails. People drown when there's a swimming fail, you drown. Airplane fails. People crash and die when there's an airplane fail. I'm like, no, like Halloween fails, where you scare somebody, they can do a holiday-related fail. She's like, okay, how about Christmas fails with a focus on extreme gift disappointment? What the fuck are you? It's the creepiest shit I've ever heard of. With gift disappointment. Speaking of my wife, by the way, I was leaving today, and despite it raining, I only had my Geo Metro to drive. You guys know what Geo Metro is? It's like a roller skate. And it doesn't have a top on it. And when I'm driving it, my wife thinks I look like a Happy Meal toy. Kind of everywhere. I was running through this because I told my wife, Rail's her name. I told her, I said, I'm going to say a bunch of shit about you. She's like, I don't really care. Kind of like the next thing is me because you're a loser. But I shouldn't say that. So I'm thinking of all the things I could tell you about her. One of the things is that once she falls asleep, she becomes a different person. How many people are married in here? Or sleeping beside someone on a nightly basis? Anybody else notice that their wives become a different person? Like, they're never nicer. That's never true. It's always a little meaner. My wife has this habit where I'll be laying there just watching TV, she'll be asleep, she'll roll over, knee me in the crotch and go, quit trying to wake me up. And then there's the other thing, and we've all been there. Sometimes you'll come home and you're looking for some type of human romantic contact. And you're trying to play the cards, and you're trying to see what you can get out of this. And nothing's happening. And it's obvious nothing's going to happen. And you get on the list from the top, which is porn style, all the way down to where, you finally are like, okay, I'm gonna lay all my cards on the table, because you're not trying to wake her up too much, because then she'll be awake enough to be mad enough to be able to justify saying, leave me alone and get away from me. So you try and play it, and you finally like, okay, all the cards on the table, what is the most you're willing to do that it still allows me to ejaculate? And my wife said, as she turned away from me with a blanket, you can jerk off and I'll watch. More on the way to indicate that even that wasn't an actual offer. So yeah. I had a couple of things I want to tell you guys, if that's okay. Where am I welcome, or can we go with another minute or three? Hit it. I try. I own a comic book store, and instead of this being a shameless self-promotion, of what I do and how I make money, I'm not even going to bring it up, the name or anything, calling Here's Comics. I'm not going to tell you where it's at, Wildlife Fort, West Virginia. I'm not going to tell you how to get a hold of me, 301-697-1909. But in that store, as you can imagine, there's some nerds, some geeks. And when I was a kid, being a nerd or a geek meant you were just a social pariah, and now it's like cool. Like there's guys that are like on the football team showing up in Ghostbusters uniforms and stuff. I'm like, I'm gonna kill you. Anyway, my friend Tim's here. Yeah, Tim! Tim and I are in the store, and the door swings open, and a man that was wider than he was tall comes busting in as if he had just left the scene of an explosion. He just comes running and goes, hey man, you got a bathroom I can use. Like, what? You got a bathroom, about 99% sure this is flatulence, but my ass should be over a toilet when I let her go as an insurance policy. Oh my God, no! And he went, and then he just peeled back out. And that was it. And that was the cleanest customer I had that day. That's true. One last thing I'd like to touch base on, and that is what I think is the scariest, most horrifying thing in the world. And that is public bathrooms. Everybody's used a public bathroom. It's disgusting. What I think's gross about them is when you walk in, people write shit on them that's bad. And have you noticed, the worse it is, the more prepared they are to rate it. Like they write stuff with a pen. Who walks into a public bathroom with a pen? And they write all these like horrible, homophobic, racist, misogynistic, horrible things. And when you walk in, you feel worse for having read them. Like I walk in and see something like, I want you to die, and it's written on the toilet seat, but when you walk in, it's written upside down, and you're like, oh my God, like, were they sitting while they did this? Like, how many negative things are pouring out of this person's orifices at one time? At least if it was a swastika, it would be up in the air as to whether or not they did it while they were standing there, or while they were looking there. And the other thing I think is when you're in those situations, I'm going to draw a similarity like Walking Dead. When you're in one of those horrible situations, rationale tends to go out the window. People start getting hysterical and jumping on, whatever they got to do. Like the rationale just goes out the window. All reason is gone. And so things you wouldn't normally believe under certain circumstances, if you have this heightened sense of stress and anxiety, you might be more apt to believe. And if I have to go into a public bathroom, which is as rare as humanly possible, and I'm getting ready to sit on the toilet, and I look up, and the door of the stall has been carved with a knife that says 80% of poop splash causes AIDS, I'm probably going to hover. That actually happened to a friend of mine. I'm not naming any names. Tim. That actually happened. The other thing, too, is I think that it makes us worse people. Because when you're in those public bathrooms, you're like, this is gross. I think I'll just piss wherever I want. It's already disgusting. Now, I'm not flushing this. I'm not even going to give them the foot flush. I'm leaving this here. I'm going to make it worse. Everybody's done it. You don't even have to raise your hand. But we've all done it, Tim. Oh, yeah. So what I would suggest is that we all try to work together to make the public bathrooms a little cleaner. So what I'd like to... No, I'm not doing that. That bathroom's fucking disgusting, and I want it to be even grosser. I just said make it a little cleaner. Ew. I'm not doing that. What do I look like? Somebody that cleans bathrooms? Anyway, everyone, please raise your right hand. And repeat after me. I think we can all get on board with this. I Hereby solemnly promise to flush it forward and clean up after myself. Okay, now if you look around the room and saw anybody with the right hand up, that means they're probably the ones that were doing it and they're going to continue to do it. So when you get outside, beat the shit out of them. Right on Main Street. I think the paper here only comes out once every 3 weeks. By the time your face is in it, you'll already be gone. I usually end with a Spencer story. How many people have heard the Spencer stories? Really? Like 5 people? I spent 10 years managing Spencer gifts. And I'm going to tell you guys a quick Spencer story, if that's okay. I'll take by that smattering of applause that you can't wait to hear it. So I'm working at Spencer's with a girl who's about 17, and her name was Miranda. And these ladies come in, and they're about 500 or 600 pounds of pop. They kind of look like those twins that rode the mopeds in the Guinness Book of Records. You know what I'm talking about? And then there's a black lady with her hair pulled back in a bun so tight it's the size of a nickel and she can't blink. There's a white lady with a bowl cut like Darlene in season 7 of Roseanne. They made it look like she weighs about 700 pounds instead of 600 pounds. And they just come rolling, like literally cannonballing through. They might have even been riding a moped or a donkey or something. I don't know. You couldn't really see anything under the undercarriage. And they come walking to the back. And the white lady picks up this thing we had called the G-Spot Killer. No exaggeration, it was the size of my forearm. The vibrators, I sell sex toys at Spencer. If you haven't been there, that's what's up. So she pulls it up and she shows it. The lady's like, Jackie. Now, who here has seen Coming to America? Do you remember the landlord when they first get there? It's like, yeah, it's a real shithole. Remember that guy? That's exactly what Jackie's voice sounded like. When she saw this, she went, oh yeah, that's gonna open up your butthole real good. And when she said that, I looked back and Miranda threw up all over the floor. I was 17. I walked over and said, Miranda, are you okay? And she went, did you hear what she's gonna do to her home? Like, yeah, that's bad news. That's pretty bad news. Well, this has been pretty fun. I appreciate you guys, and it's nothing better than to hear the laughter and applause of 24 people. I mean, there is, but this was good too. Thank you very much. And now I think we're going to bring up our headlining act. You guys ready for him? He has a CD, Comedy Night with Bill Bernke, and he has some shirts, and he is super hilarious. And he told me about 3 or 4 things, and I've talked so long I can't remember any of them, and I apologize. But I'll tell you right now, when I saw that he was going to be here, I was super excited. I thought he was hilarious. I watched everything that he had online, and it's just going to be a real treat. So everybody, please welcome Bill Bernke!
Hey, let's keep it going for Tate.